start on the, whoops, here we go. Okay, we should be alive on here now. We've had a bit of a misstart on the fire there. For some reason, she didn't stream away straight away. But if you're in the chat session, give us a shout out. Let's see who's with us. As you can see, I'm broadcasting live from sunny New Zealand, just at my mother-in-law's house today. I still haven't moved into my new digs. But Steve, it looks like you're in a flash new location there, man.
Yeah, pretty swanky, Yeah, well, as you might notice, I'm not on a plane coming back from Seattle as I thought I would. And
yeah, I thought you were going to be with me, yeah.
Able to join today. I was trying to set up some meetings since I was going out there, realized that everyone was actually back here in Orlando. So I made a decision to put off that Seattle trip till later and go to Ignite instead. So I've been out at Ignite for the last 3 days. And it's still going on. It's going on till Friday, but they got through most of the the content that's of interest to us, and some stuff we got on our run sheet today to talk about. Should be pretty interesting.
Frank, we're not going to change ourselves to Power Space Up Live. We're going to stick with Power Up Live. I see there a good comment about that.
It wouldn't hashtag well. It wouldn't hashtag well with a space in it.
No. And we really, Power Up Live is just a hashtag rather than anything else. So it has to have no spaces. So,
well, it's also it's the name of our show, right?
Yeah. Mate, tell us about Ignite. It seems epic. What, 30,000 people there? Like, what was the atmosphere while you're in the building?
It's packed. I mean, it's wall to wall people. And it's funny because you'll stand on some of these upper balconies just looking down at this big mass of people walking, and then you go look over the other side and it's the same mass over. It's an incredible amount of people. And that facility, there's only a few facilities. I guess I was talking to some of the Microsoft folks that put that together, and they were like, there's only a couple of places that can even do an event that big. Orlando's one, Vegas is one, but they already kind of do enough in Vegas. I think they mentioned Chicago. But those are the only venues really in the US that are even big enough for an event that big. It was just massive. A lot different feel than Inspire though, because Inspire is also, massive. They're probably comparable in size, the two events, if this isn't even bigger. But this is their event. So Build is their developer conference, right?
Okay. Yep.
UG is the external conference, really more for users, right? And this one is definitely around that IT admin community, and there's plenty of developers there as well. So it was interesting having UG occur not that long ago.
Yeah. And
sitting in on a couple of those sessions where they were presenting, something about Power Apps. And at UG, of course, it's all about, hey, this is citizen developer. You don't even need a developer for any of this stuff. You can do anything you want. You can do everything yourself without even a developer involved. And I hear at this conference with the same slide deck, it's like, those citizens, they're not going to be able to do shit without you. You guys are critical in the whole. So it's funny how they kind of pivot the narrative depending on the audience.
Yeah. Interesting. Todd Mercer asked there in the chat, with 30,000 people, is it too big to gain value from? I mean, one thing that I noticed is that this is the first time I've seen the BizApp community out there in force at an Ignite event, right? In the past, last year, there was a bit, but this year it seems they've saved up and done a lot. They've dropped a lot of messaging, a lot of announcements at this event. Definitely at the start of the week, it seems that that's the case. I don't know, if there's still content if there was today or as the week goes on. But what are your thoughts on what Todd's saying there? Do you get value with 30,000 people? Should a BizApp type person be coming to the Ignite event? Is there the value?
Well, I think that certainly seems to be their goal. I mean, clearly Ignite is an established event for many years, always has a large crowd of that IT admin community type people. And particularly when you think about some of the more recent announcements that they came out with around Power Apps recently about customer or users being able to spin up their own and all the IT community, they needed to get to those folks and calm them down. And I think this is the first year we're seeing a significant footprint around the whole power platform. You could tell there was some interest. Lots of folks maybe that are in IT or Windows people, that are kind of filtering over and taking a peek over the fence and seeing what's going on over there. I expect that that's just going to grow and become, I think I told you there's only like a handful of us MVPs that went there, which I was a little surprised at. But I think next year, based on what happened this year, it's kind of like MBAS. The first one was pretty good. The second one was better. The third one will be better. And I think next year, I think you probably would want to go, and it's in Orlando, right? So what a perfect trip to grab your family, bring them down. They go do all the Disney parks while you're working. And that seems to be a lot of people that were doing that too.
Yeah.
So it was funny. So Ryan Cunningham did a session about, kind of addressing that issue of, the IT admin concern about Power Apps kind of being the next shadow IT and just going to go run amok in their organization. And he said, I have one slide to show you that should allay all of your concerns. And he pops up the Office 365 admin screen, the login.
Right. Yep.
He says, this is the difference between Power Apps and any other shadow IT going on in your organization. This is the login screen. You have to log into your corporate enterprise Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. And from there, you can control everything and anything. They had some big enterprise customers up there. Schlumberger's got like, 100,000 employees, talking about how they manage this and that whole, just that whole enterprise management of this stuff so that it's not just sprawl. And they were talking a lot about how they've built these like levels in their organization where they're trying to get users to build apps, and depending on what it is they're trying to do, there's different categories where maybe it gets more governed. Obviously, API access, maybe it gets even more governed and things like that. So they've got a structure in place for doing it, but when they just talk about some of the money that has been saved in their organization and time by kind of letting users that are as close to the process as possible, come up with solutions to their problems, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at something lately, and which is, how do you get every data point into the system? So, and when I talk about I'm talking about, so let's say WhatsApp now, right? WhatsApp is used by a lot of business folks to kick off a relationship, right? You can get somebody's mobile phone number for whatever reason. Hey, on WhatsApp, I feel is becoming more and more the common. I'm out, I meet people on WhatsApp. Yeah, well, let's share, bang. And you've just opened a communication channel. The problem with WhatsApp comms, it's not in the system. And what you're losing, right? So I was talking to a recruitment company in England in London, just before I left. And they said, so much recruitment now is done through WhatsApp. My concern is we don't have those conversations inside the Power Platform or inside Dynamics. And they said, listen, we're not worried about what's being said. We're not worried about what's, the nature of it or anything. But what we're worried about is that if that data is not in the system, you can't train an AI model to be more responsive to this customer because we're missing that conversation chunk. And so they're going, we want all the conversations purely to feed the AI behind it. So it tells us, man, you made a commitment over here that you're going to contact this person today. You honor your commitment. Like, here's the next best action. Here's the next best. And I just think that, more than ever, if you've got paper-based processes inside of an organization, you're missing so many opportunities because you're not providing the ability for patterns to be identified and acted on and improve your business processes and the way your organization runs. Just jumping over to chat, can you just take a look in chat? I know we've got a few other people.
I don't have it up at the moment.
You're slack. You're slack.
I am slack.
Let me read out a few from here. We've got somebody, Holibed's recommending I change my name from NZ365 guy to Power Up guy. But I think I'll leave the brand as it is. I like sleeping 365 days of the year. I love eating chocolate 365 days of the year. And I love drinking fine wine 365 days of the year. Which, by the way,
you drink wine 365 days a year?
Yeah, I could.
That's
if it's good. I don't. I tell you what, I got given a bottle of it's called Octomore whiskey from Isla, it's from Brook Luddy. And this is one of my send-offs from London the other day. A beautiful bottle of like the highest peat content you can get in a whiskey in the world. So that was a very nice gift. We've also got Dave Newman on from Perth in Western Australia. He's liking the new time slot. So that's awesome. Good to hear from you, Dave. I'm sure we're going to be in touch before too long once I kind of officially start working again next week.
So I did just go out and pop up the chat window, and but while I was looking at it, it says there's an error occurred on our stream. So we're not getting any playback on the stream. Is anyone else watching able to see the stream?
Well, I've got it up on another device and it's working fine.
Is it? Okay. Well, maybe it's conflict.
I don't know if it's on your end or what. Just looking. Yeah, no, it's all working on both two different browsers. So anyhow,
good.
One of the things in the, big announcements made this week, one of them was, of course, around the rebrand and rename. And if you've seen stuff on Twitter, everyone's having a bit of meltdown, about the number of syllables and stuff in Power Automate. But, they're saying it's going to be, as in their Microsoft vision goal is much more than just flow. We've got the Power, what is it? The robotic process automation coming into play, which I know is I don't know if we should even call it a V1, maybe a 0.05. Because some of the comments and how they've implemented Selenium and stuff leaves still a lot to be desired. But
I had conversations with some folks about that particular piece also.
Okay. Yeah.
The whole Power Automate, the problem there was Power Flow was a registered trademark of other companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they couldn't get that. So and I think at the time they probably figured, well, it's not that big a deal, just Microsoft Flow. But now that it's right dead center in the whole Power platform, I think they decided we need a Power name, and that's where they came up with this Power Automate. It's funny because even the Microsoft folks, I sat through Steven Siciliano's session, they're not used to saying it. No. And I think he referred to it once as Powerate. Messing up a few words there because they're still getting used to it themselves. So
I think it's marketing that's made this call, right? Because they've obviously made the spaces. They're saying it's Power Space BI, Power Space apps, and
consistency. Make it some consistency.
And it makes sense, right? So there's 4 products now that make that app with Power Virtual Agent being in the mix now as well. Did you see any presentation on Power? It's obviously the virtual agent that's been around for a while. They're just rebranding and making it a bigger deal. And of course, it runs directly on CDS now, right? There's no need for a Dynamics dependency.
Yeah, the Power Virtual Agent actually came out of the field service chat chat tool. I guess that was the origins of that. But they really took it into a UI for building a virtual agent that looks a lot like Flow. It really looks like that same kind of look and feel of Flow to build your agent. So it looks to me like another move towards we want to have citizens be able to build bots if they need to. I mean, it's Flow level stuff. If anything, it's probably easier than Flow. And there's a preview going on the one side of a fake chat that you're creating while you're creating your bot. So it looks, it's not going to be a super sophisticated AI driven. It's still, you're typing in responses that it's looking to hear, but it looked pretty cool. I think there'll be lots of folks. I could see lots of businesses throwing those things up on various websites and stuff like that, just kind of keep things moving along. It's going to be cool. And the RPA thing that you talked about. It's funny, right? They built that on top of Selenium, which is, the leading.
It's open source, right? Selenium.
And it's open source. right? So how ironic is it? How many? It wasn't that many years ago that open source was called what? A cancer? I think they referred to it as a cancer. And now, not only are they allowing open source in their platform, but they're building things themselves on top of open source.
Massively. Aren't they now the biggest servers of Linux in the world in Azure?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a fact I heard or was intimated about. Like, they've definitely embraced whatever tool it takes to be more performant and get more done, right? Whether they own it or not. If it's open
when you
source.
stand there and you say things like open source is a cancer and you lock your whole ecosystem down, well, a certain amount of customers you're just going to lose. Just because you've built an artificial wall out of, I don't know, ego, vanity, whatever.
But that's a Steve Ballmer area, right? It's another Satya change. It's come in and he's gone, you know what? We're not going to put those walls up anymore.
Well, Steve Ballmer, yeah, but Steve Ballmer, I mean, this was Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates was pretty ruthless. And Bill Gates is the one that really was building the fences around. I think he's the one that said open source is a cancer, not Ballmer.
Is that right?
Ballmer just kind of picked up the ball where Gates had it and continued, the same plays.
Yeah.
But clearly Satya and Satya and Gates are close. I mean, they talk about a lot of stuff, but I think the one thing you can't argue with is the stock market. I mean, you're looking at a company that was flat in the stock market for decades.
Yeah.
All of a sudden just shot up to the most valuable company in the world. You don't question anything the guy driving that car is doing.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't think it's just Satya that's kind of brought about these changes. As in, once again, go back to Brad Smith's book. Have you finished reading it yet?
I have not.
Hurry up, man.
You're a faster reader. You read a book in like a day.
So he talked about when the whole antitrust case happened, and that it was kind of like, we're in Seattle, New York was where the seat of power was, that type of thing, or government, and they didn't need an office there. Where they've totally changed now, right? They realized
Washington D.C. Washington D.C.
Yeah, Washington, yeah. So Brad Smith, once again, really took this, you can't afford just to flick the bird to government and say, you know what, we're more powerful, we've got more money, we can do all these things. You've got to work with governments. And of course, now you're seeing this total change. And so I think, Satya is definitely a spearhead, but there's a lot of smart operators now running across Microsoft. They've brought in some very smart operators.
Yeah. That RPA, I did look at one of the demos of that. I think it was actually, Charles that was doing that demo. And it looks pretty slick. I mean, the whole idea here for anybody listening who doesn't know what they're trying to do is, we can get to a lot of stuff through APIs, right? To be able to work with and engage with, which is ideal, you're right down at the data layer, right? But there's still some legacy applications out there, and there's a lot of them where there is no API. And the only way you can engage with the data in that platform is through the UI, right? It's through the user interface, the form that opens when they click on their desktop application and launch this on-premise legacy application. It pops up a form on your desk to fill in. There's the data. And you're either entering data in it or you're seeing data that was in there before. And so this whole idea of this RPA is, it's a desktop application or browser. There's a browser version as well. That just, you can initiate from Flow, from Automate, to go and do things that you otherwise would need an API to do, like go open up this form in this desktop, find this field, put this value in it, find this field, grab that value from it and bring it back into CDS.
Yeah.
So it's funny because it almost feels a little Stone Age, because it's really, but I mean, there's just so much data locked in those old systems at big companies, and there's no other way to get a hold of it.
Yeah. It's screen scraping at the end of the day, isn't it, really? Because there's no API for so many of these things.
Yeah, exactly. As well, screen scraping, but they're also inputting, right? So they're push data back in as well. So you could have And I don't know what Power Automate is going to call the flows. I don't know if they're going to continue with that or if they're going to call them.
Yeah, they are. Well, as in on the call that we had, before this all got announced to market, the idea is that they will still be called flows.
Makes sense.
And the example was, you don't go and build a Power BI. You go and build a dashboard using Power BI.
Yeah.
And so Power Automate is going to be, you're going to go and build a flow in Power Automate. That's Makes my sense. Understanding as a way we're going to talk about it or think about it.
Yeah. So you can certainly create a flow that reaches into your CDS, and grabs some data from a record based on some trigger, and then initiates this UI tool, the RPA, to go and open up that form on the desktop and go drop these values in these fields. It's pretty slick when you're building it. It's showing you. It's coming back. You use a recorder, right? Like the old screen recorders, right?
Yeah.
To record your macro. It's like a macro recorder.
Yeah, macro.
Of what you're doing, and then when you're coming back and reviewing it in your builder, it's got the little screen capture there of here's what this field was where we clicked, and pretty neat. I'm a little nervous that unless these systems are stable and don't move around very much, that there could potentially be, that for some reason or another they go launch this flow, but somebody in the back office has moved a field around on the form and the legacy app, and suddenly the whole thing blows up.
Yeah, so some of that's going to, as in, I think that we will see more smarts come into it in version 2, 3, that type of thing. Even for those type of scenarios that it's actually been moved, but still an understanding of what the field is. Yep. Let's say the labeling hasn't changed or something like that, or understanding what the data is. I think we'll get their aim is to build that intelligence in that, even if there was a movement, it's not just purely. I think we can't see it as kind of or even is that scenario going to happen? Because let's say you're dealing with a mainframe that you're running this across, right? It's pretty unlikely that field's going to move. We think of a field moving because we can do it with decorative development, on CDS or the Power Platform. I think what we're not going to do is I think these are more for traditional systems that it's, if they want to move a field, it takes 4 months to have a field moved, exactly. By someone. So in other words, it ain't changing. They're not investing any more money in that. They're going to use it as is, as best they can, sweat the asset until it can't be sweated anymore, and then click.
It's probably a bigger challenge with some of because there's also a browser-based version of this, right?
Yeah. Browser's different. I agree with you there.
With legacy web applications that are out there that may be a little more subject. There's also right now what they've released is what's called attended mode, right? Meaning, there's somebody sitting at the desktop when they initiate this, and it's doing the stuff for them on their desktop.
Yeah.
But they're also looking at an unattended mode. And they were talking about basically running these things on a VM.
Yeah. Which scripted, right?
Which seems like that would be certainly potentially safer because, who knows, user's desktop is about the most unreliable thing on the planet, right? Suddenly some virus pops up or different things are interrupting the processes. And that one just seems like that's going to be a source of a lot of potential support calls.
Yeah.
If you got to go and open up the form to make sure that it actually occurred every time you do it, you kind of lost some of your efficiency,
Yeah. One of the questions we've got here is quite off topic, which is around Microsoft Learn. Do we think Microsoft Learn is currently up to snuff to bring people up to speed? If not, should a person go? Well, if not, should a person go? I've got no comment on that. My personal opinion, after just having to re-engineer my exams page on the website where it deals with certification, with the new developer certification, it's definitely not an easy tool to use in my mind. It's definitely the search functionality. I knew the exact name of the courses, being that I authored a bunch of them. I couldn't even find them knowing all that detail until I, kept one eye closed, poked my tongue out the right way, and I finally discovered those courses. So I think there are some issues with, and I don't know if they're running usability stats across it, or, seeing where people are just an issue in our industry and know what to look for. It's not self-discoverable. That's what I'm finding a bit off point about it. So I do agree there needs some work done. MB400, I think I've already chucked up MB400 and MB600. I'm not sure I've put MB600 content, but I've definitely put MB400 content up on my, so if you go to nz365guide.com/exams, I've updated whatever is available right now based on research of a couple of days ago when I updated that. Z-Power Driver, one of the things he said before he left, he's going off to run a Power Platform happy hour, is that Analyze, Act, Automate is definitely something you're going to see consistently come from Microsoft, which is really the business story above these tool sets. Analyze ultimately mapping to Power BI, Act being apps, and Automate being, what we've got with Power Automate. So totally agree with that. I think we're up to speed with the stuff in the chat. Oh, where should they go? I see what, sorry, I see what you're saying, Ken, around where should a person go? Yeah, it's difficult. That is the source of truth. I mean, my that web page that I just gave, /exams, it gets a heck of amount of traffic because all I'm doing is interpreting their site and giving you a direct map to it. And from somebody that kind of knows their way around the ecosystem, just because, I think it's not that easy in the current format it's in.
So the content is there. It's not
the content's there. It's just discoverability of the content is off the chart. That's the issue. That's definitely.
What is the team been saying to you about getting that sorted out?
I'm not close enough to that team because it doesn't sit inside BizApps anymore. It sits inside of what's called Worldwide Learning, and they're a massive multi-million-dollar org in their own right, and they're dealing with everybody. They're dealing with Azure, the Office 365. Every product of Microsoft now feeds up into this, and so you got to think that our part of the world, to a degree, is still a little part of the world. Even though I think 50% of the content that's up there on Learn that's consumable as e-content is Microsoft BizApp stuff. So we are kind of leading in that respect. So there's a lot of great content. I heard that there was a bit of complaint in the industry from learning partners that Microsoft was providing all this e-learning content free, and that was their bread and butter with classroom-based training courses.
Sure.
And I'm just like, mate, suck it up. The world's moving. You're only going to reach, 10, million people on this. It's not going to be via classroom learning, right?
Yeah,
it's just not going to be. It's going to be e-learning is going to train the next masses.
That's not a message that the guy who's built a business doing classroom training is going to just smile and absorb. Oh, okay, I'll just suck it up and fold up my tent.
No, you don't suck it up and fold up your tent. You get into e-learning. Get where the program's going, right? Pivot. But don't be a taxi driver being pissed off at Uber because the world changed and technology made it easier, cheaper way to do something. Okay. I see so many people in life get upset about change because it affects them rather than going, you know what? Fucking move on. Yeah. Time to change, right? We're in a different world. My groceries get delivered now. I don't have to go to the supermarket. Soon, my transportation, I won't have to drive my car at all. The world is changing. Either bitch about it, complain about it, chuck your toys about it, or move on, get with the program, and get re-educated so you can be part of what's next. No matter what age, honestly, I think, the idea of retirement at 75 is just a falsism. You're going to live to 100. Statistically, right now, if you're in the Western world, there's quite likely you're going to hit 100. My dad's dad died in his 50s. My dad is now just about at his 90s.
Yeah.
It's just the life expectancy is on the increase. If I don't at least hit 101, I'll be pissed off. and you'll hear about it.
Because we'll still be doing this show.
Yeah. So, that will be crazy. Now, one of the other announcements, which, Charles Lamanna alluded to when we were having a chat at Dynamic Community Summit, and that was around AI Builder, adding pre-built models. So it came out with 4 pre-built models, right? Binary classification, definitely my favorite. But now they've brought out 4 more, and it's interesting. They brought out 4 more, but if you go and have a look at that video, he said there's 8 more coming.
Yeah.
So he said 8 more. Now, what are the 4 that have come out? Key phrase extraction. And by the way, if you want to look at actually, I'll chop it in the chat. There's a great blog post here from James Phillips that was released as part of the, I'll just paste it there, part of all the announcements this week. And what they've got there is that the 4 new pre-built modules, let's just grab them up here on the screen if I can find them. Key phrase extraction, so identify the main talking points from text. So it goes back to what I said before about the need for all data to be flowing into your system if you're going to be able to do some of this flash stuff. Language detection identifies the predominant language from the text being spoken. Text recognition extracts embedded, printed, and handwritten text from images into machine-readable character streams. Man, you think about what that can open, right? Potentially, well, I can see ideas already.
Especially because they're going ahead and, I mean, this capability has been there, but you would have needed data science. You would have needed all kinds of asks to get it to do that. So, so for them to go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and pre-bake some recipes 90% for you, do a bunch of that heavy lifting so you don't have to get, a big investment to get into it, and give you like something that's almost ready to go. Here, you plug in the last bit of stuff that you care about.
Yeah.
And that's frankly the only way the AI stuff is really going to get to the masses, is they've got to make
it has to happen, right?
It's got to be consumable, and it wasn't consumable before some of these tools. And the same thing with that customer insights. That's a pretty powerful piece of technology there that is that's actually accessible. Unlike things in the past, and even though it's sits in the Dynamics 365 family, it doesn't require Dynamics 365. I mean, it's interesting that they put it in that branding category, because it's not. I mean, you can use that tool with Salesforce and SAP, and nothing else if you wanted to. It doesn't require Dynamics.
I'm wondering if some of those tools that are more in product and not tools, but more in product, they're apps like customer insights, like product insights, where Microsoft has built the solution 100%. It's done, right? All you got to do is bring data. I'm wondering if those are going to keep that Dynamics nomenclature, and then what you're going to see is everything that's a tool is going to be Power something or sit within the Power Platform. So whether they'll keep that name for, that concept of sales, as we've seen now, customer service, marketing, customer insights.
Well, they kind of have to keep the name now because you went out there and said it was dead. So they have to keep it alive just to prove you wrong on something, whatever they end up sticking it on.
I saw on Twitter this week, I was quoted at extreme. So a lady tweeted out and said, just to borrow a phrase from Mark Smith, NZ365 guy, because he tagged me in it. She was saying passwords are dead. So they must have a session on where Microsoft's going with their passwording technology. And she goes, as NZ365 guy said, Dynamics 365 is dead. Passwords are dead as well. So I'm pleased that I seem to have owned that phrase by that one-off little scenario, but I can't say Flow is dead because there's a new name, and of course flows, as I said, are going to continue to exist. I did,
and it got quite a few new features added to it as well. So it's
and I think we're going to see a lot more, right? It's not an enterprise BPM, and I think that's their goal, is that it will become an enterprise BPM that can take on a lot of the enterprise BPM tools that are in market. But there's a whole level of sophistication that has to come about for that to happen. So you think of an enterprise BPM, like I always I've used this illustration with customers before. You take a loan origination. A loan is atomized over a 30-year period. And during that period, interest rates are going to go up and interest rates are going to go down, right? Based on the currency and the official cash rate of a country. Now, those are all flows ultimately, right? Recalculating those, but you're going to be able to take an in-flight flow or business process, edit it, and say, now carry on from where you're up to with this edited next step.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you don't say stop and I'm going to start a brand new flow over it and it's going to go, whoa, back to the start. No, you ought to be able to pause them, edit them, hit play, carry on business. And this is kind of the enterprise, level. I think that flow, I think it's going to get there, and it's going to be, once again, it's going to be a democratized tool, where in the past you needed a BPM guru to run it, somebody that was very understood every nuance of a BPM system. I think it's going to be made possible that these tools the masses can use with very low skill development.
I think one of the things that all of this power stuff has opened up is the humongous amount of untapped revenue that has always been around the perimeter. We've only had tools that went straight to the core, right? We want you to rip out Salesforce and replace it with our stuff, or rip out SAP, replace it with our stuff. And those are hard motions to do. And you're looking at SAP, multi-million-dollar, multi-year deployment. That thing ain't getting ripped out. No. But if that was your only angle towards growing a business, was ripping out humongous things and replacing them with your humongous thing, which is that big enterprise play. But now when we're looking at what we're able to do with Power Apps, is I think there's as much money to be made all over that organization with everything else that can be solved with tools that don't need to be as sophisticated or enterprise grade necessarily than there is with that great big heart of the organization. That's one great big massive deployment. But you look at these companies like Chevron and Schlumberger and some of these folks that are stood up on SAP. But there's a ton of money to be made by Microsoft and partners. Other than just, if we don't get the whole enchilada, we don't, there's just a lot of opportunity around all those edges. Was it Chevron has like 1,000 Power Apps launched or something like that in their organization?
It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the beauty of it is, BPM, business process management is what BPM stands for. Sorry about using an acronym there without being clear about what it is. The thing is with these companies, right, is that they want a platform that is standardized so that they can create all those unique scenarios for them, but they don't have to train. They don't have separate support packages. They don't have to have a separate supplier or, managing all the nuances of licensing relationships with multiple vendors and things like that. That's why, I was thinking of, if I had this when I was back in selling, Dynamics CRM against Salesforce, this is just a different game. Keep your Salesforce. I don't care about that. But I tell you, every app that you're going to need from this point forward, we're going to tap into your Salesforce data set. You keep that there. We're not interested in it, but man, we'll build out everything that's associated. And I think that whole, I saw a diagram come out of Ignite, which just had API and then what flows in CDS from that API. And it's a massive fire hose of potential. So I can see how, the API is really the gold standard now of tapping into any system and accessing anything and making it part of the story. Also, did you see the Azure Data Lakes story around being able to copy now, it's in beta release, your CDS instance straight into an, you need to spun up your Azure tenant with Azure Data Lakes. And you can real time now have that pretty much like a mirrored instance to run any analysis, reporting, anything like that without any impact on your CDS environment. I'm thinking wow, that just opens up once again so many possibilities. Another layer of security, as in from a redundancy perspective for any company. I was working once with a company out of Sydney that specialized in the stock exchange, and when we were talking about doing it in Dynamics 365 online, their whole thing was, mate, we can't get a backup of the system. And it's like hell, we're going to trust Microsoft without being able to get our own backup. Now, I know going back with this type of solution to that company, they'd be like, bang, we're happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very happy.
Well, it is funny because just when you look back even a year ago at what we were selling customers, even a year ago, I wouldn't have any of those conversations the same way today. I mean, we just have too many different things now that are better solutions, and it's in a way it's a little frustrating when you look at a customer that you worked on a year ago, deployed. They're very happy with stuff, but you look at it and you think, if I know there's no way you'd want to spend the money to redo everything that we did because you haven't gotten your return on your investment. But boy, how much better it could be if we built it today instead of only a year ago. It's pretty amazing. And some of those, when you look at systems, you talk about Salesforce is a good example. SAP is another one. These are big, pretty mission critical systems. And one of the challenges with IT in particular, especially in enterprise, they guard that system. I mean, there's important shit happening in there, and I can't have everybody in the organization with their silly little need go mucking around in there to make their own little app or something on Salesforce. No, forget we even have Salesforce. You department head in remote office, forget we even have Salesforce. It's not a tool for you. You just keep using Excel. So this is, I think, potentially a bigger business than the Salesforce, deployment or the SAP deployment, And the other advantage is you talk about how Microsoft will get there with the enterprise grade on some of those things, but for these kind of use cases, that's already there. I mean, they're already at that point now. Anything they're adding incrementally would be what to ultimately supplant SAP or something, which is, I don't know about that. What's happening anytime soon.
So true. I mean, I think that the opportunity is more than ever. Sentiment analysis. We covered 3 there of the AI Builder new modules. The other one is sentiment analysis. So detects positive, negative, neutral, or mixed sentiment in social media, customer reviews, or any text data. So once again, for running anybody that has a system that deals with customer support, this is a powerful tool, right? As in, to have this available that you can plug into any part of what you do.
Do you know, will WhatsApp plug into the channel integration framework piece? Or
so the thing is about WhatsApp, there's an MVP. He's a Turkish MVP, but lives in London. What's his name? I'll look him up while I'm talking. I'll look him up in a second, actually. It starts with B. And he has created a tool that integrates WhatsApp to CDS.
Oh, okay. So he made a connector.
Yeah. I mean, he's made he's made a connector.
Yeah. Because to your point, if you've got in your common data service, you've got the email, you've got the relationship with the customer, but for some reason or another, WhatsApp has been used for them to complain on. Right? Yeah. Now suddenly your sentiment analysis out of kilter. The sales system shows they're happy.
Exactly.
You don't have the benefit of this other tool that's being used to complain on.
Yeah, exactly right. You're missing that data set. I was going to look them up. Don't let me stop you while I'm looking this up.
I think we're still circling back, and we've had this conversation before about this need for, and Googs had alluded to it in the first pod I did with him. I don't think we brought it up again in the one where you and I were on with him, but that's about this getting your data estate in order. I mean, all we're talking about is grabbing more data sources and connecting to more things out there and making that data estate pile bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. But if it's messy, that whole garbage in, garbage out, I mean, that still applies. And there's massive amounts of messy data. Customer insights, part of what that tries to do is say, we don't care that you got a bunch of duplicate data in your system. you tell us which is the real deal, and we're going to use that. Everything else is like plan B or plan C or plan D. But for the most part, I think there's still going to be a huge opportunity for a partner. I mean, it's shitty work, right? I mean, who would want to do it? I mean, nobody wants to clean up.
Someone that wants to make the money, though.
Well, that's the key. I mean, there's money in doing shitty work that nobody else wants to do that needs to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, we have that even right now with customers when it comes to we've built your Power App for your business, and then they're like, okay, now we'd like to get the data into it, and I'm already ready to. Well, you don't want to do that yourself, because I just know they're going to send.
Yeah.
You send me. So here's a spreadsheet. Okay, great. All right, and then wait a minute, here's another one. Oh, Bob had one over here too. We need his data. And before you know it, you got 27 spreadsheets that are inconsistent from one another, and it just turns into a humongous project. And that's simple, right? We're just talking about a very simple data experience there of multiple spreadsheets with replicated data to try and get reconciled and into a system. But as we keep connecting with this API world, talked about that graphic where it shows it running off into, I think you could almost say that's running off into spaghetti. Not careful,
Barris is the guy. This is the guy here.
Okay.
Yeah. I've just dropped his details in there. He's created the API connector to WhatsApp that I know of. So feel free to hit him up if that's something that you're after. And then the other thing I'll just try and look up is that graphic that you're talking about. I'll drop that in the chat because it just got published this morning by one of the MVPs.
So Ken,
the former MVPs.
If AI Builder could be used for data cleaning. I don't know if it's designed for that. What do you think, Mark? AI Builder?
Yeah, I don't know. As in, I'd have to check out how that use case would work and the specifics of what one would want to achieve with that. I mean, I assume it could,
Todd
right?
wants to know, out of all the announcements that came out, and to be honest, I didn't hear all of them. I mean, the thing's still going on over there. He's asking, which is the dark horse that could be big in 2020? I'm thinking that visual bot builder. What the hell is that called? Power bots.
Virtual agent.
Virtual agent.
Yeah, Power Virtual Agent.
I think that based on what I saw of being able to build a virtual agent, this is the closest I've seen to something that is accessible, for people to be able to make bots. And the bot framework and all that crap was just too much effort, too thick, too heavy.
Yeah.
And but I think there's a lot of interest in people to build bots for any size business for all kinds of use cases.
Yeah.
And they really have come out with a pretty slick tool set that looks quite accessible. No code, again, we're back in the no code world of building, pretty sophisticated bots. So Todd, I'd keep your eye on bots. I think that they might finally have cracked the nut on that one with this release.
Yeah, for me, I think it's still the AI stuff. As in, I'm just going to paste into the window this diagram that we've been talking about. So take a look at that. I think that'll pop up for you. So it's called the Common Data Service. Looking at starting at API with the apps around, and then so that's landed today. And security, logic, data storage, integration, everything spanning from that API point. And I think it's a great graphic that shows us, just how big the story is getting the whole Common Data Service, and what's available out of the box there.
Yeah, and we're really getting, it's interesting with this RPA thing launching, because we've got to be getting, that's got to be an enterprise thing only, because there's no mid-sized businesses that to really speak of. They're still sitting on systems that don't have an API. It's
the big banks, right? It's the big banks, the big telcos. It's these big companies that have stuff built on COBOL. Yeah. They've got mainframe application, old IBM, what is it, AS4000s or whatever they were. I can't remember back in the day. I remember working for a pharmaceutical company, at the very start of my career, and they had a system that, was running on an IBM mainframe. It was custom built around pharmaceutical distribution. And the cost, they spent millions and millions and millions. And this was like 20 years ago on the stuff. And those assets, they're intending to sweat them a long time. I've worked for banks that are modern banks starting up, and they go and buy a system that is still only keyboard driven, no mouse input. And it's just like, because they're trusted and they've been around for ages, they're still being sold, even though they're not human usable. Like the first thing they do is go and put a new UI over the top. But they're, this software, I reckon, this robotic, screen reading type software is to address these massive enterprises. I think you're right. I don't think there's small businesses that this is going to mean squat to. There will be
which is why I didn't mention that as something I thought was going to blow up. I think of the market, while it's big customers, it's a small market and there's only going to be certain partners who engage with customers that big. Yeah. And you're right. Those big systems, it's not like you're going to go into some bank and say, hey, let's build a new back end system on Power Apps. That ain't gonna fucking happen.
No. For them, that's like a 5-year project. You're doing that because there's no way they're going to move live financial data into something that isn't 100% tried and tested and validated, and somebody else has probably used it already. They're not going to be the first cab off the rank.
These are not risk-taking, experimental type mentality organizations.
Yeah. I tell you what, I think we're going to see a lot more of, though, and just coming back to the third world in New Zealand, like I have, is the lack of modern banks. In New Zealand, there's 4 key banks, and then there's the fifth was a challenger bank called Kiwi Bank here. But they are just so far behind the 8 ball. And what I noticed in the UK and Europe is these challenger banks that they didn't exist 3 years ago. They've set up, and in no time they've raised, over $1 billion in capital, and all their apps, they have no concept of ever having a bank branch or a teller or anything like that. And their fees are a fraction of the cost. I'm a big fan of TransferWise. I've run my business for 18 months now, 100% on TransferWise. In New Zealand, they just entered the New Zealand market because the banks here were charging $1 billion a year in international transaction fees on Kiwis. There's only 4 million bloody Kiwis, right? There's not that many. And they were raping $1 billion worth of fees every time a Kiwi traveled out and used their credit card on a non-New Zealand currency transaction, which is 99% of everything, right? Because if you want to bring in something from Amazon, you're going to be on a different transaction. And $1 billion in fees from a small country, and they've been able to come in, and I reckon we're going to see more banks do this. Go, listen, forget the old banking institution that are just ripping you blind on fees. This is going to be the new way to do business.
If you want to identify the next industry to be disrupted, go find the one that everybody fucking hates the way it works.
Yeah. Banking 101, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's ripe for disruption, and it's been slow here in the US. Some of the big national banks now, you'll see where now they still have a branch, but when you go in, there's not necessarily tellers. There's like ATM machines on the wall that you engage with. Yeah, and if needed, some personal pop up on a monitor and walk you through some, how to stick your check. But that's like a baby step. To be able to just take a picture of a check on your phone and have it deposited, do everything, there's no need. I haven't been to a bank.
No country has used check for years. I don't even know why the US still uses a checkbook. I mean,
it's so annoying. We still have customers that'll like mail us a check in the mail.
So that line, the checks in the post, is a legit thing.
Still exists.
Wow. No such thing in the world I've lived in for at least 10 years.
At least I haven't had anybody ask me to fax them anything in a long time.
Yeah. Do you know, talking about such things, I've been involved in setting up a startup recently as a Microsoft partner. Microsoft has no concept of signing up a company that doesn't have an existing domain name with an email address attached to it. It's just like,
they won't accept
boom.
like Google or Gmail.
No. So they say enter your company address. Now I know I have my company address. I know that as soon as I have my Office 365 set up, I'll have an email address.
Yeah.
But right now, today, when I'm signing up Microsoft, I don't have that yet. That's why, they've based all their user interfaces around taking an existing company across. They don't have any concept of a new startup company. And I've had it in 2 cases. So, I've got a startup that I'm involved in that's going to launch in the first week of December, and been working on it for, 9 months now, 10 months, and putting all the ducks in a row for this. It's funny. They're definitely designed to take on, and it's for me. So we've set up one partner under a domain name that is not used just to make it work, and then had to redo the whole process again once we had Office 365, etc. set up. The second is my brother's just about to sell. He owns a couple of big holiday parks here in New Zealand. And so he's going to lose his email that he's had for 20 something years that I set up way back in the day, That domain name has been sold. And he's like, okay, so how do I run my investments and everything after this point that, for my wife and stuff? So let's set you up. I said, listen, let's just not muck about. Let's set up an O365 instance, and we'll just get an E3 plan for you and your wife, and you'll be good to go, right? Because that gives them Office, it gives them storage, and it gives them Exchange so they can run an email. What does it ask you to do to set up a new Office 365 account?
Give them your email.
Give me your business address or your school address, but no concept of, no, I'm a new company wanting to start up, and I've owned the domain name, but I don't have an email address yet to give that to you, because as soon as I have Office 365 set up, I'll give you the zone file, the DNS and all that, and then we will be in business.
Yeah.
Just, they don't have a concept.
I went out, I don't know how long I've had it, maybe 15, 18 years, and grabbed stevemordue.com.
Mm-hmm.
So just for that kind of reason. So, I mean, everything I've got on my forceworks.com is really ForceWorks business.
Yeah.
But if it's not business, ForceWorks business, I'm using that one. So if I sell this company, I don't even care. There's none of the email what I care about, because everything coming to that address is business related. And
Yeah. That's exactly the scenario. Well, buddy, we're at top of the hour, about to sign off.
Flew by again.
Yeah, it flew by. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the week. I'm not sure if you're popping back into more Ignitic sessions, or do you feel they've done the main bit at the moment?
I think they definitely covered the Power Platform hard and early. I think most of that team's probably already bugged out. So the big celebration tonight, I gave Sarah my badge so she can use it to get her husband.
So, Joe, awesome.
Yep. So
awesome, man. Well, good talking to you. I'm going to kill a stream, and we'll see you next time.